When I hit the lights on the blue sedan for rolling a stale yellow at 3rd and Magnolia, I thought I was buying myself paperwork and a lukewarm coffee, not a headline. By the end of the night, 3 units would be parked nose to tail under a weirdly cheerful billboard about holiday shopping. A K9 would be pawing at a bumper like it owed him money, and I'd be staring at the kind of truth that changes what you think you know about a quiet town. Before we continue, tap subscribe and drop where you're listening from in the comments. It was 9:42 p.m., a wind-whipped Tuesday that smelled like wet asphalt and burnt diner grease. My partner, Ortiz, had signed off early to make his kids' recital, leaving me alone with the kind of calm that makes cops suspicious. Dispatch was yawning through a false alarm on Maple. The high school was dark except for the janitor's lonely light. I watched the blue sedan glide through the intersection like a ghost that couldn't be bothered with physics and eased in behind it. Nothing fancy, just a quick chirp of the siren, the universal, "Hey, let's talk." The car drifted to the curb under the halo of a broken street lamp. You notice small things first. A rosary dangling from the rear view. A pine scent tree so strong it made my eyes water. The trunk sat just a little low, like the car had eaten a heavy lunch. Not a crime. Plenty of folks treat their sedans like pickup trucks. But I filed it. I approached on the driver's side, hand on the pillar, angle of the flashlight a habit so old it felt like a tick. She had both hands at 10 and 2, nails neatly done, a ring that caught my beam and threw it back at me like a dare. Late 30s, maybe, hair pulled into a no-nonsense bun. A red coat with a collar someone cared about. She met my eyes and then didn't. "Evening, ma'am. I'm Sergeant Lena Vega with City PD. Know why I stopped you?" A beat. The light. Her voice was careful, like she'd practiced honesty with training wheels. "You rolled through on yellow just as it went red. License, registration, proof of insurance." She moved slowly, always appreciated pop, there goes the glove box, and a polite avalanche of papers. My flashlight caught a clean interior, too clean. No crumpled receipts. No kid cereal ground into floor mats. People think cops like messy cars because they hide secrets. It's the other way around. Sterile means curated. Curated means intentional. "Where you headed tonight?" I asked, easy tone, the kind you use when you want the truth to wander out on its own. "Home," she said. "Long day. I'm a nurse." She slid me her license. Lydia Marsh. Address across town, newer development with mailboxes that all look like they attended the same seminar. "Nurse, huh? Which hospital?" "St. Michael's," she said too quickly, then blinked like she'd left the oven on. St. Michael's closed its ER at 8 for staffing. Everyone in this city knows that. It's where my mother sat in a waiting room for 3 hours last year with chest pains because urgent is a word budgets love to ignore. A gust shoved the pine scent through my jacket and into my brainstem. Underneath it, something less friendly. That sterile, teeth-stinging hint of bleach. I leaned just enough to get a look at the back seat. A folded tarp peeking from under a blanket. The kind of contractor-grade plastic people buy when they're renovating bathrooms or pretending they are. "What's in the trunk, Ms. Marsh?" I asked it like I was asking about her favorite taco spot. She gave the smallest smile that wasn't a smile at all. "Laundry." I volunteer. "Donations." My radio crackled like it had a cough. "Unit 21. Status?" "21's code 4 on a traffic," I said. Eyes still on Lydia. "Send me an 11 to 6 for backup, please." "Copy. Who you want?" "Whoever's closest." She exhaled, slow. "Is there a problem, Sergeant?" "Not yet." I took 2 steps back to my cruiser and ran her information. Clean. No wants, no priors, a recent address change. Insurance legit. It was the kind of record that relaxes you if you're new and tightens you if you're not. In the rear view, her silhouette didn't fidget. Calm can mean innocence, or it can mean that the outcome is already decided. Headlights swung in behind me. Miller, fresh cut from academy, boots still squeaking. He slid out grinning like I'd called him to see a raccoon stuck in a vending machine. "What's up, Sarge?" "Blue sedan. Lydia Marsh. Strong masking odor. Trunk rides low. Says she's a nurse at St. Michael's." He made a face. Yar's dark this time. Mm. We reapproached. I like to give people an exit ramp before I build a roadblock. Ms. Marsh, here's your info back. Real quick. Mind popping the trunk so I can confirm those donations? If it's what you say it is, you'll be on your way in 2. Her fingers tightened on the wheel. A tiny storm you almost miss. I don't consent to searches. You're right, I said, friendly as coffee. You free to refuse. Her eyes flicked to the mirror, caught Miller in it, then returned to me, colder now. Am I being detained? For the traffic violation, yes. For anything else, no. I stepped back, angled my body to the trunk. The air tasted like the locker room at a pool. Chlorine ghosting over something organic, something the pine was losing a fight against. I don't do gut feelings. I do patterns, and this was one. Miller, I said, voice low, pager K9. Tell them we've got strong odor, possible concealment, refusal on consent. Copy, he said, already moving. Lydia's jaw worked like she was chewing through options. She rolled the window up halfway. The engine ticked softly, heat bleeding out of it into the night. A train wailed somewhere far off, the town's endless lullaby to itself. Nothing to see here, go back to sleep. K9 Bear arrived with Officer Yuan, whose patience has saved me more than once. Bear did his ritual. A polite sniff of the air, a small sneeze like he was offended by the pine, then a slow, methodical circuit of the car. Lydia stared straight ahead, statue still. On the second pass at the rear, Bear stiffened, head cocked, then sat, clean, unambiguous alert. Yuan looked at me. I looked at Lydia. Ma'am, I said. Based on the alert and the totality of circumstances, we're going to search the trunk. Her lips parted. You can't. I can, I said softly. And I will. She stared at me for 3 heartbeats. Then, as if deciding on a tip, she reached down and clicked the trunk release. A sound rolled out that made the hair on my arms stand up. Not a scream. Not exactly. More like the wet exhale of air escaping a sealed space. A whisper of pressure giving up a secret. The lid rose slow, betrayal in hinge form. I've seen a lot of things in 21 years that don't get better with practice. What waited inside wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Contractor plastic, thick and cloudy, layered with the fussy care of someone who believes they're doing a thing correctly. 3 long, unmistakable shapes nested side by side like bitter gifts. Tape wound in tidy bands. A pale crescent of something unmistakably human where the wrap had shifted. No blood, no gore, just the quiet finality of color that doesn't belong in a trunk. Miller's breath hitched. Yuan's hand settled on Bear's collar like a prayer. Lydia didn't look away. She stared at the empty street, at the broken street lamp's halo, at nothing at all. Ms. Marsh? I heard myself say, voice steady from a place below my ribs. Step out of the vehicle. Keep your hands where I can see them. The pine scent swung one last lazy circle in the night and surrendered. The street was empty except for us. The broken lamp throwing a jittery yellow over Lydia Marsh like it couldn't make up its mind whether to light her or let her vanish. My cuffs felt heavier than they had all week. Step back toward my voice, I said. My tone carrying that clipped authority you only learn after years of people testing it. She complied with the slow precision of someone walking barefoot across glass. Her red coat swayed at her knees, the collar still neat, as if dignity could survive this. Miller moved to her left, hands hovering, his breathing shallow but audible. First real felony arrest of his career. Traffic stops and drunk and disorderlies don't prepare you for this. Yuan hung back near the trunk, his flashlight cutting a cone of hard white over the shapes in the plastic, his jaw clenched tight enough to creak. Bear sat obediently beside him, head tilted, nostrils twitching in the pine and bleach haze. Hands behind your back, I told her. The cuffs clicked home, the sound carrying farther in the quiet than it should have. You're making a mistake, she said, voice low but steady. If that's true, I said, guiding her toward the cruiser. It'll get sorted out at the station. Tonight's job is mine. Tomorrow's is the DA's. She didn't resist, didn't plead, didn't do anything but keep her eyes forward. like she could will herself through this by ignoring it. I opened the rear door, helped her inside, and shut it on the last piece of calm she might see for a while. Miller hovered at the trunk now, eyes locked on the plastic. "Sarge, are we calling CSU?" "We're calling everybody," I said. My thumb hit the transmit button. "Dispatch 21. I've got a code 207 possible 187 in progress. Need crime scene, coroner, and CID to my location. Notify watch commander." There was a pause. Dispatchers don't like hearing possible 187, unless they have to. "Copy 21. Crime scene and CID en route. ETA 12. I stepped back to the trunk. The bleach was strong enough to burn the back of my throat now. Whoever did this had tried to erase something and failed. Yuan's light caught on the pale crescent again, confirming what my brain already knew. That curve wasn't from any mannequin or Halloween prop. Skin has a tone, even in death, that plastic can't mimic. "You want me to start photographing before CSU gets here?" Yuan asked. "Just wide shots," I said. "Nothing gets touched. We'd been here long enough for curiosity to start fermenting in the neighborhood." A porch light clicked on half a block away. Then another. Curtains shifted like eyelids in a dream. It wouldn't be long before phones came out, before our quiet little tableau became shaky video on social media with captions like, "Cops find something in car trunk? Let's get her car blocked," I told Miller. "Nobody gets within 20 feet of this scene unless I say so." He jogged back to his unit, parking it nose out to box in the sedan. Yuan moved his cruiser to seal the other end. The scene now looked like what it was, a cordoned-off island in the middle of a city that had gone still to watch it. I leaned on my own car, eyes scanning Lydia through the glass. She sat rigid, hands cuffed in her lap, lips moving just enough for me to tell she was whispering something. Maybe to herself, maybe to someone she imagined sitting beside her. "Think she's gonna talk?" Yuan asked, voice low. "Not tonight," I said. "Tonight she's still in control in her mind. Tomorrow morning, different story." The first unmarked sedan rolled up. A pair from CID, one carrying a camera case, the other already snapping on gloves. They didn't even look at me before heading straight to the trunk. Expressions flat but eyes hungry. Detectives live for moments like this. The ones that start as a whisper on the radio and end in front-page ink. "Who's your suspect?" the taller one asked. "Name's Lydia Marsh, 38. Says she's a nurse. Claimed laundry in the trunk. We've got 3 large wrap shapes and AK-9 alert. No visible blood. Any ID on the shapes?" "Not yet. Haven't unwrapped." "Good," he said. "We'll handle it from here." CSU's van arrived next, lights off, as if discretion could hide the fact that they'd parked in the middle of a crime scene. The techs filed out, cases in hand, moving with that brisk care that says they've done this before and will do it again. One began setting up portable lights, washing the scene in bright, indifferent white. The neighborhood watchers leaned harder into their curtains. One woman in slippers edged onto her porch, phone clutched to her ear, eyes wide. I could imagine her words. "No, I'm looking at it right now. Police everywhere. The trunk open. No, I can't see exactly. But..." In the car, Lydia turned her head toward the lights, blinking slowly, almost dreamily, like she just noticed them. Then she smiled. Not big, not warm, but there. And I felt something shift in my gut. Not fear exactly, but the awareness that whatever was in that trunk, it wasn't the start of this story. It was the middle. We'd just pulled on a thread that was going to take us places no traffic stop should. And Lydia Marsh, nurse or liar, was ready for us to follow it. The portable lights turned the scene into a stage, every shadow chased into the gutter, every detail made to confess. The crime scene tech with the camera crouched low, lens clicking like a metronome, while the others unpacked paper, evidence bags, and fresh gloves. Detective Harlow, the tall one, glanced over his shoulder at me. "You hear when the stop went down?" "Yeah." Rolled a stale yellow. Heavy masking odor. Trunk rides low. Refused consent. Bear alerted. He grunted, not quite a thanks but close enough in detective speak. We'll want your dash and body cam footage. You'll have it, I said, though my mind was already replaying the stop in slow motion. Lydia's careful answers, the St. Michael's lie, the way she didn't so much as twitch when Bear sat at her trunk. Harlow and his partner, Rivas, pulled on fresh nitrile gloves, the snap of each cuff crisp in the cold air. Let's see what we've got, Rivas said, voice flat but eyes bright. The first layer of plastic came off with the rasp of duct tape giving up its grip. Bleach fumes pushed back at us, sharp and chemical, and underneath it, the low, unmistakable funk of rot. Not fresh, not ancient, somewhere in between. The shape inside wasn't just human, it was female. The pale curve of a shoulder, hair matted but still catching the light. CSU froze, cameras clicking, documenting every inch before the next wrap came off. Miller swallowed hard behind me. That's one, he said, voice smaller than he meant it to be. Rivas nodded toward the next bundle. Number 2. Same process. Same smell. Male this time, judging by the frame, though decomposition had blurred the lines. Harlow's jaw tightened. 3, Rivas said, moving to the final shape. I could feel the neighborhood watching, even through the glass and curtains. Somewhere, a phone camera was probably recording in grainy zoom, turning this into a video that would have 1,000 shares by morning. The last bundle came open slower. Not because they were being careful, though they were, but because this one was smaller. Too small. The bleach smell couldn't kill the truth under it. My stomach dropped in that way it does when you see something you can't unsee. Jesus, Miller whispered. Child. Couldn't have been more than 8 or 9. Harlow froze, the tape halfway off. He'd been doing this job longer than me. But there are things no amount of years can sand down. He stepped back, pressing his lips together, nodding for CSU to take over. They worked in silence, cameras and tweezers, bagging anything that looked like it might talk in a lab. I glanced at Lydia through the cruiser window. She was watching now, her head turned just enough to catch the lights on the plastic, the slow movements of the techs. Her face didn't change. No flinch, no frown, not even curiosity. You can tell a lot from someone's reaction to discovery. Some people break. Some fight. Some start rehearsing their alibi right there on the curb. Lydia was none of those. She looked like she'd just remembered where she left her keys. Harlow came over, lowering his voice. 3 bodies. One's a kid. This isn't local. No missing persons matching these ages in the last 6 months. You think she's a transporter? I asked. Or she's the end of the line, he said. Dispatch crackled in my earpiece. 21. Be advised. Units are responding to a disturbance at the address on Marsh's license. Caller hung up before giving details. Neighbors reporting shouting. Possible break-in. Harlow's eyes met mine. That's yours. Was, I said. Now it's ours. He nodded. Go. We'll finish here. Bring back whatever you find. I headed for my cruiser. The air still thick with bleach and December cold. Lydia watched me approach, her gaze steady. Going to my house? She asked as I opened the door. Your house, I said. Not anymore. For the first time all night, she smiled. Why, real. And it wasn't the smile of someone worried about what we'd already found. It was the smile of someone who knew we hadn't even started. The address on Lydia Marsh's license took me east, toward the kind of development that looks like it was designed in one afternoon by someone with a ruler and a fondness for beige. Identical driveways, manicured shrubs, porch lights with matching bulbs. Even at night, it felt sterile. Dispatch had given me the cliff notes. Neighbor heard shouting, maybe glass breaking, then silence. Patrol car was already on scene. I rolled up slow, lights off, letting the cruiser's engine hum announce me to whoever was inside. Unit 14's car sat angled at the curb, Officer Baines leaning against the hood, arms crossed tight over his vest. He's been on the job long enough to know that disturbance calls have a way of changing their outfits between the time you're dispatched and the time you arrive. Tell me you've got something, I said, stepping out. Got a front door that's wide open. No lights on, no answer to calls, Baines said. Neighbor across the street says it started about 15 minutes ago. Male voice shouting, female crying. Then a bang. Then nothing. I glanced at the open door, a black mouth in a beige face. No movement inside. Who's supposed to live here besides our friend in the back of my cruiser? Public records say just her. No roommate, no spouse. That didn't mean much. Records always lag behind reality. We moved in together, Baines on my 6. The air inside hit me first stale, closed up, with a faint copper tang under it. Not bleach this time. Not pine. Just that flat smell of a place where someone hasn't been cooking, living, or breathing for a while. Clear right, Baines said as I swept the entryway. Shoes neatly lined on a mat. Keys on a hook. The kind of curated order I'd seen in her car. The living room was empty, couch cushions aligned. TV remote centered on the coffee table like it had been placed for a real estate shoot. No dust. No clutter. No life. Kitchen's clear, Baines called from behind me. Fridge is empty. I mean empty. No milk, no condiments. Just a 6-pack of bottled water. Upstairs, the first bedroom was stripped. Bare mattress, no bedding, no clothes in the closet. Same for the second. The master had furniture, but no personal touches. Drawers held a few neatly folded sweaters, all neutral tones, all smelling faintly of that same artificial pine. It was like walking through a showroom that occasionally pretended to be lived in. Nothing here, Baines said, frustration creeping in. There's something, I said. It's just not in plain sight. That's when I noticed the attic pull cord in the hallway ceiling. The edges of the access panel had fresh scuffs. Faint but there. Baines caught my look. You thinking what I'm thinking? Yup. He fetched the step stool from the laundry room and I pulled the cord. The panel swung down, ladder unfolding with a metallic groan. A thin draft rolled out, cooler than the rest of the house, carrying something dry and faintly sweet, like old wood or old paper or both. I climbed first, flashlight in one hand, the other on the rail. The attic was mostly empty, insulation crunching under my boots. But in the far corner, against the rafters, sat 3 heavy-duty plastic totes, gray with yellow latches. No dust on them. I knelt, popped the first latch and peeled the lid back. Inside, envelopes. Dozens of them, all thick with something. Cash. Bundles of it, bound with bank straps from 3 different institutions. Baines gave a low whistle. Someone's retirement plan. The second tote held passports. Not 1 or 2, over 30. Different names, different countries, none of them Lydia Marsh. Alongside them were driver's licenses, social security cards, and several worn wallets. The third tote was heavier. When I opened it, the air shifted, heavier somehow. Inside were framed photographs, some with cracked glass. Families, kids, vacations, weddings, smiling faces of people I didn't know, and some I did. I pulled one from the stack, a little girl in a yellow sundress, gap-toothed grin, holding a balloon. I'd seen that face. Not in life, but in the trunk tonight. Baines was quiet now, the weight of the room settling on him. This is bad. It's worse than bad, I said, snapping the tote shut. This is a trophy room. A sound downstairs snapped our heads toward the ladder. A door clicking shut, soft but deliberate. We hadn't cleared the basement. Baines mouthed gun? I nodded, drawing mine as I descended, the attic shadows swallowing us behind. Whoever had just entered Lydia Marsh's house wasn't expecting company. The sound had come from below, under the polished emptiness of Lydia Marsh's staged life. Baines and I moved silent, muzzles angled down. Every stair creak sounding like a gunshot in my ears. The basement door was half open, a thin blade of light cutting across the hallway carpet. On 3, I whispered. Baines nodded. We swung through, flashlights slicing into the dim. The basement was finished. Linoleum floors, white walls, recessed lighting. But the air was different down here. Warmer, damper, and carrying that faint organic smell I'd picked up at the trunk earlier. Not strong enough to be obvious. Just enough to stick in your throat. At the far end, a figure stood half-turned toward us, backlit by a single bare bulb hanging low over a workbench. Male, mid-40s maybe, wearing jeans and a black thermal. hands in front of him on the bench, unmoving. "Police!" I barked. "Show me your hands, slowly." He didn't flinch. He just turned his head enough for one eye to find us over his shoulder. Calm, like he'd been waiting for someone to say those words. "You're early," he said. "Hands. Now." He raised them, palms out, and I caught the glint of something metallic around his wrists. Not cuffs, but a chain. One end looped through a metal ring bolted into the bench. The other hand was free. Baines kept him covered while I closed the distance. The chain wasn't locked. It could have been slipped off any time. Which meant it wasn't restraint. It was theater. "What's your name?" I asked. "Daniel," he said. "Daniel Crow." "Why are you here, Daniel?" He smiled faintly. "Because she told me to be." There was a flatness to his tone that put my nerves on edge. He didn't look scared. He didn't look relieved. He looked like someone playing a part he'd rehearsed. The workbench in front of him was worse. Tools laid out in surgical order, pliers, scissors, heavy-duty tape, a stack of gallon-size freezer bags, all spotless. Next to them, a half-empty bottle of that same industrial bleach. Baines muttered something low under his breath. "Where's the rest of the house?" I asked him. "Gone," Daniel said simply. "She told me to wait here. Said if anyone came to tell them." He trailed off, eyes flicking past me, toward the stairs. Pivoted. The light from upstairs was gone. Baines! Footsteps exploded overhead, fast and heavy, crossing the main floor toward the back. We took the stairs two at a time, Daniel's voice calling after us. "She's not who you think." But the rest blurred under the pounding in my ears. By the time we hit the kitchen, the back door was swinging open into the cold night. A shadow cut across the yard toward the side gate. I didn't need a second guess. It was Lydia Marsh. Even cuffed, she moved fast, her coat flaring behind her. I was halfway to the door when Baines's radio cracked to life. "All units be advised. Suspect Marsh is not in custody. Repeat, suspect has escaped PD transport. Last seen heading east on foot." I froze for half a breath, watching her slip through the gate. She hadn't been running from us. She'd been running to something. Cold bit through my jacket as I hit the back step, boots thudding across the frosted grass. The yard was narrow, fenced with 6-foot planks that turned the night into a tunnel. The gate at the far end still swayed from her passing. The latch tapping would like a nervous metronome. Baines was behind me, breath clouding in the December air. "How the hell?" "Later," I said. My eyes were already tracking the churned earth where her boots had hit soft spots in the frost. She was headed east, just like dispatch said, but her stride was long, steady, not panicked. She knew exactly where she was going. We slipped through the gate into the alley, a narrow strip running between the uniform backs of the subdivision houses. Trash bins lined it like silent sentries. My flashlight caught movement up ahead, her red coat, now dulled by shadow, sliding past the bins toward the cross street. "Lydia!" I barked. She didn't even turn. Baines sprinted ahead, cutting toward the next gap between houses to head her off. I kept my pace, knowing sudden speed would make noise and give her more reason to bolt. But she wasn't bolting. She was purposeful, her head turning once, just enough for me to catch the glint of that same unsettling smile from the cruiser. By the time I reached the end of the alley, Baines had come up empty. No sign of her between the houses. I scanned the street. It was quiet, almost too quiet. A single porch light 2 houses down through a cone of gold onto a driveway where a black SUV sat idling. The passenger door was open. I moved in, gun low but ready. The SUV's interior light showed no one inside, but the driver's seat was warm under my palm, the heater running. On the passenger seat, a folded piece of paper with my name written on it in neat block letters. Baines leaned over my shoulder. "You think she—" "Yeah," I said, unfolding it. Inside, 2 sentences in the same precise hand. "You're chasing the wrong person. Check the storage unit on Old Mill Road before midnight." No signature. No clue how she'd learned my name, my full name, but the note felt deliberate, weighted. Dispatch crackled in my ear again. 21. Status on Marsh? I glanced at the idling SUV, the note in my hand, the empty street beyond. "She's gone," I said. "And she just gave us homework." Baines frowned. "You buying it?" "No," I said, tucking the note into an evidence bag. "But I'm not ignoring it either, because whether it was a trap or a lead, Lydia Marsh was pointing us toward something. And from the way she'd walked into the night calm, almost relieved, it was something she wanted us to see." Old Mill Road sat at the edge of the industrial strip where the city's glow thinned into the dark silence of the valley. Self-storage units lined both sides like uniformed soldiers, corrugated metal doors, faded numbers, sodium lights that hummed above cracked pavement. Even at night, you could smell the oil and dust, the faint tang of river water from somewhere unseen. Baines and I rolled up with lights off. We didn't need to spook anyone who might already be watching. The lot was empty except for a dented sedan parked by the office, its hood dusted with frost. The lock on Unit 317 was newer than the others, black, clean, without the faint red rust on its neighbors. I crouched, running a hand over the hasp. No sign of tampering. "You want to cut it?" Baines asked. "Not yet," I said. "Let's get a warrant. If there's something in here, we're not losing it to a bad entry." While Baines called it in, I walked the row. Most units were quiet, the echo of my boots bouncing between the metal walls. The 319, I paused. The faintest hum, like a fridge compressor, bled through the sheet metal. Not illegal, not unusual, but in this dead place at this hour, it stuck out. Baines rejoined me. "Judge is faxing over approval. We're good to go." Bolt cutters bit through the lock with a loud snap. The door rolled up slow, its steel groan spilling into the cold. The first thing that hit me was temperature. Warm, humid air puffing out like breath. The second was the smell. That same bleach and pine mask I'd chased all night, but weaker now, undercut by something sweet and rotting. We stepped inside. The unit wasn't packed with furniture or boxes. It was organized, rows of sealed Rubbermaid tubs stacked 3 high along both walls, each labeled in neat handwriting. Kitchen, clothes, books. The far end held a chest freezer, its cord snaking to an extension plugged into a cheap power strip. The hum I'd heard outside came from here. Baines glanced at me. I nodded. He flipped the latch. Inside, wrapped bundles. Not as large as the ones in Lydia's trunk, but the same careful plastic, the same layered tape. A faint frost clung to them, and when my flashlight beam hit one corner, I saw the outline of a human hand inside. Pale, stiff, fingers curled inward like it had tried to hold onto something in its last moment. Baines swore under his breath. We stepped back, letting the shock fade into the kind of cold you use to keep working. On a metal shelf beside the freezer sat a ledger. Black leather, edges worn, pages filled with dates, names, and columns of numbers. Some names had neat checkmarks beside them. Others were crossed out. Halfway down one page, I saw a name I recognized. Daniel Crow. The man chained, not chained, in Lydia's basement. And under his name, today's date. "Baines," I said, closing the ledger. "Call Harlow. Tell him we're not just looking at Lydia anymore. She's keeping score." Harlow's unmarked slid into the storage lot 20 minutes later. Headlights off, breath smoking in the cold as he stepped out. He took one look inside the unit, freezer, bins, ledger, and his jaw worked once before he spoke. "Jesus, Vega, you trying to hand me a career case or an ulcer?" "Little of both," I said, passing him the evidence bag with the ledger. The hum of the chest freezer filled the space between us, low and steady, like a generator under a stage. He snapped on gloves, eased the book open, and flipped with the care of a priest turning to the bad part of Scripture. Each page was a grid. Left column names, 2 columns of numbers, a final column with either a neat checkmark or a bold slash. He scanned like he was reading not just ink but motive. "You recognize anyone besides your basement guest?" he asked. "2 so far," I said. "Crow, and a kid from a flyer last spring, Jessica Alcott. 9. One of the wraps in the trunk tonight." Harlow's thumb paused mid-page. "And the rest. Faces from the break room board. Our unsolveds, now organized." Baines was photographing the tubs stacked shoulder-high along the walls. The labels were housebroken. Kitchen, books, linens, toys. Nothing about murder likes handwriting that tidy. He popped the lid on books and whistled. Inside, children's picture books with felt corners worn by small teeth, chapter paperbacks with bent spines, and on the inside covers, inscriptions in looping ballpoint. To Molly, happy 7th. Love, Aunt Claire. Evan, you're our brave boy, Dad. The kind of love you put in ink because you expect the book to outlast the moment. Inventory, Baines said softly. Not trophies. Shipments. He went to kitchen. Not thrift store randomness. Complete sets. Boxed. A tub of stainless measuring cups nested like silver shells. Another with 3 identical electric kettles still in their foam. Linens held vacuum-bagged comforters. Flattened and labeled by size. Toys broke my heart. Action figures rubber-banded by franchise. Dolls with hair braided and retied. A ziplock of marbles sorted by color. I don't think she's keeping memories, I said. She's keeping lists. Harlow turned another page. The numbers in the middle columns tended to mirror. An amount in one, a slightly larger figure in the other. Looks like buy-in and payout, he said. Or intake and delivery. Trafficking? I asked. Maybe, but those check marks. That's fulfillment. Slashes look like cancels. He pointed to an entry with a slash and a circled number in the margin. Refund. Or a return, Baines muttered. The freezer hummed. Indifferent. Inside, the wrapped bundles were smaller than Lydia's trunk cargo, but the same philosophy of concealment. Plastic layered with the fussy care of someone who believes enough is a high bar. Frost had filmed them in a thin haze. In the corner of one, my light found a hand shape, pale, stiff, fingers curled like a thought interrupted. I didn't linger. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. 5 words. Check the last page. Alone. I glanced up. Harlow was still reading. Baines was bagging a strip of duct tape from the freezer lid. I turned slightly, enough to use the book edge to block my body cam's view, and page to the back. The last page was different. No lines. No columns. Just my name in the center, written large in clean block letters as if drawn by a ruler. Lena Vega. No date. No numbers. No checkmark. My vest suddenly felt half a size too tight. You good? Harlow asked without looking up. I shut the ledger, slid it back into the bag. The plastic whisper of chain of custody a relief I could hold on to. Yeah, keep going. We need manager records, rental agreement, payment history, gate logs, cameras. Harlow nodded at Baines. Get the office. Ask nice before you ask with a warrant. To me, you smell that. Bleach and pine, like the car. Under it, freezer burn and river rot. She's been cooling inventory in here a while. The office was a prefab cube with a bell on the counter and a yellowed sign about late fees. The manager arrived in slippered feet and a puffer vest, keys jangling like a chime. A little dog under his desk yipped once at the badges, decided we weren't deliverers, and gave up. We'll need the lease for Unit 317, Harlow said, showing his warrant. The manager's mouth tightened in the way of men who understand paperwork isn't a suggestion. He typed with 2 fingers, printer coughing out 3 pages. Rented 6 months ago, he said. Paid cash, 3 months up front. Renewed last week. Name? I asked. L. Marsh, he said, then squinted. But the email is Marsh Logistics, LLC. Weird, that's new. Payment today was via card. He slid the agreement over. The signature looked like someone had learned cursive from a YouTube video. Gate logs? Harlow asked. The manager printed another sheet. Keypad codes, unit number, time stamps. You'll need a warrant for camera footage, he added, tapping a dusty DVR under the counter. Harlow handed him a second warrant like a magician producing a dove. That, we have. While Baines copied the DVR to a drive, I scanned the logs. 317 had been accessed 3 times in the last 24 hours. 6:13 a.m., 3:04 p.m., and 10:57 p.m. We were here at 11:21. Who's 10:57 tied to? I asked. Code ending in 38. The manager said, peering. Assigned to not Marsh. A contractor. DM Services. He flipped pages. That code belongs to a Daniel. He stopped. Crow. Baines and I traded a look. The ledger had him with today's date. The logs had him minutes ahead of us. Harlow folded his arms. So your basement guest has a key to the pantry. My phone buzzed again. Tick-tock. Sergeant. Same unknown number. I didn't reply. We hauled the DVR back to the unit and set it on the shelf. CSU had arrived, threading their way between units with rolling carts and polite focus. One tech started dusting the freezer. Handle. Another fanned powder across the tub's latches. The prince would be a party guest list. Found a camera. A tech called from the corner. She held up a little plastic cube that looked like an air freshener. Wi-Fi nanny cam. Battery lately changed. Whoever placed it wanted eyes on this exact angle. I took it in my glove and looked into its tiny cyclops eye. My phone buzzed a third time. Now you see me. Get that to digital, Harlow said. I want the last 48 hours before sunrise. The manager shuffled in with a clipboard. One more thing, he said, eyes darting between our faces like he was afraid to deliver bad news. We do plate capture at the gate. It's not perfect, but he handed me a grainy printout. A blue sedan, our blue sedan, framed by the chain-link entrance. Timestamp, 3:04 p.m. The driver's face was washed out by glare, but the passenger was clear, turning to say something. Not Lydia. Younger. Dark hair. A quick, sharp smile I didn't recognize. Who's that? Baines asked. Nobody I've seen, I said, but my stomach answered differently. I'd seen those eyes before, just not in a face. In a sketch tacked to the board beneath the word missing. Hair different, smile absent, but the bone structure undeniable. A woman reported missing 2 months ago whose kid was in foster now. Her name blinked in my head. Not landing. The ledger would have it. Vega, Harlow said softer. What did your text say? I met his eyes. He wasn't guessing anymore. He was reading me. Anonymous tip. Told us to check the unit before midnight. Same number? He asked. Same. I lied a little. I didn't mention the second message. Or the last page. The hum from the freezer felt louder, like it was leaning in. CSU announced latent prints on 3 tubs. Partial. Viable. The tech with the nanny cam called out that the SD card was still inside. Small mercies in a night short on them. I moved to the ledger again. Let's cross-reference the plate photo with the book, I said, opening to the DS. Crow's name sat mid-page with today's date and 2 tidy numbers. Checkmark. Fulfilling what exactly? Under him, a blank entry with only an initial L. No numbers. No mark. Harlow watched my finger hover and then drift, like a magnet felt but not seen. You're not telling me something, he said, quiet enough for only me. I kept my eyes on the paper. It's not ready to say out loud. Say it anyway. I thought of Lydia's calm smile in my cruiser, of Daniel chained to a bench he could have walked away from, of a unit packed like a department store in miniature, of a last page that had only my name in a hand that wasn't shaky at all. This isn't her endgame, I said. It's an invitation. To what? To step onto the board she's been setting up, I said, and to make sure we see exactly what she wants, in the order she wants it. The manager coughed. Detectives? Someone just used the gate. We turned as the lot's sodium lights flickered. An engine idled beyond the row, faint but closing. Harlow's hand went to his holster in the same second mine did. Positions, he said, voice dropping into that calm we borrow when adrenaline wants to shout. To CSU, shut it down. No one moves unless you're behind steel. I looked at the ledger one last time before I bagged it. The last page pressed against the plastic like breath on glass. Lena Vega. The letters were too straight to be angry, too measured to be a threat screamed in ink. It felt like a label on one of those tubs. Kitchen. Books. Vega. A place to put me when the time came. The engine outside climbed a note. Headlights swept the gap, then cut. Whoever this is, Harlow said, eyes on the dark. They think they're arriving to a system that still belongs to them. I slid the ledger into my vest, felt the outline flatten against my chest, and told myself that names written in neat block letters have only as much power as you lend them. Then I stepped to the lip of the unit, breath fogging, gun low and ready, and waited to see who had accepted Lydia Marsh's invitation besides us. The engine noise cut out just as the sodium lights over the far gate flickered again. The lot sank into that muffled, industrial quiet. Just the freezer hum, the faint ping of cooling metal from the SUV Harlow had parked at an angle near Unit 317, and somewhere far off, the scrape of tires against gravel. Baines was crouched behind a row of tubs near the back of the unit, his Glock steady. CSU techs had gone still, half-hidden behind their rolling cases. The manager had retreated to the office, his little dog barking once before thinking better of it. The first figure appeared between the units, tall, hood up, hands in jacket pockets. Not a run, not a creep. A walk with rhythm. The kind of pace that says the space belongs to you. Harlow met my eyes from across the aisle. He didn't need to say wait. We let the figure get closer. When they passed under the overhead light, I saw enough. Male, early 40s, face like it had been sanded down by years of outdoor work, jaw stubbled. He glanced once toward our unit, and his gaze landed dead on the freezer. No surprise, no startle, just recognition. Evening, I called, stepping into the open. You looking for someone? His eyes narrowed a fraction. I could ask you the same thing. Harlow moved up beside me. Name. The man smirked. You first. Detective Harlow, City PD. This is Sergeant Vega. Now you. Nick Olcott, he said. The name hit like a match strike. The last name from the flyer. Jessica Olcott's father. You're a long way from where you're supposed to be, Mr. Olcott, I said. His smirk faltered. Supposed to be? Your daughter's body was recovered tonight, Harlow said, voice flat. She was in a trunk. We found property here linked to her. And your gate code used less than 30 minutes ago. That's when I saw it. The flicker of genuine confusion in his eyes. I don't have a gate code. You do, Baines said from behind us. Manager's log says your name's tied to Unit 317's access list. Olcott shook his head slowly. Never rented a unit here. Don't even know this place. Then how'd you get past the gate tonight? He hesitated, then shrugged. Woman let me in. Name? Didn't give one. Red coat. Said she had something of mine. Lydia. Harlow's eyes met mine for a half second. The ledger between us without being in our hands. What did she give you? I asked. Olcott reached into his pocket. Baines tensed, but all he pulled out was a small, clear evidence bag. Inside, a child's hair tie, purple with a plastic heart charm. My kids, he said quietly. She said if I wanted the rest of her things, I had to come here. She said you'd be here. Harlow's jaw set. And you believed her? She knew stuff about my girl's last day, he said. Things I never told anyone. She said the cops had the wrong story. The wrong story. Same words she'd used in the note left in the SUV. I stepped closer. What else did she tell you, Mr. Olcott? His eyes darted to the freezer, then back to me. That if I opened the white box in the back, I'd find proof. Not just about Jess. About all of them. Harlow exhaled sharply through his nose. Vega. I knew what he meant. We'd been ready to inventory, to process slow. Lydia was forcing our hand. Speeding the reveal, bending our timeline to hers. I looked at Olcott. If this is a setup, you realize you're in the middle of it. He shook his head. If it's a setup, Sergeant, so are you. The night felt suddenly smaller, the rows of units like walls in a maze. Somewhere in here, Lydia was moving pieces. And the freezer in front of us, humming like a patient waiting its turn, was about to show the next one. The hum from the chest freezer felt louder now, like it was aware we were all looking at it. CSU had backed off, their gloves hovering just short of the latch. Olcott's eyes never left the box, his breathing shallow, like he was afraid the thing might open on its own. Harlow broke the silence. If we do this, we do it on record. He jerked his chin toward Baines, who flicked his body cam to a solid green light. I did the same. "Mr. Alcott," I said. "For the record, did you put anything in this freezer?" "No." "Have you opened it before?" "No." "Then step back." He obeyed, but not without one last look at the lid. It wasn't grief in his face. It wasn't fear either. It was anticipation, like he was bracing for an answer he'd been chasing for months. I moved in. The latch was cold under my glove, the metal biting like January air. I counted down from 3 in my head, because it felt wrong to spring it open without warning. The seal broke with a sticky pop. A wave of air rolled out, cold, chemical, faintly sweet in that wrong way you can't mistake once you've smelled it. Inside, the contents were layered like the world's worst packing job. On top, a folded red coat, Lydia's. Underneath, not just the smaller bundles we'd already seen, but boxes, shoeboxes, plastic totes, metal tins, all labeled in the same clean block letters as the ledger. CSU started photographing, hands steady but eyes tight. Harlow leaned in. "Jesus!" The first box held hair ties, barrettes, plastic rings from vending machines, the kind of junk kids turn into treasure. The second had wallets, driver's licenses, credit cards. The third, I froze. Photographs. Hundreds of them, stacked in neat piles, bound with rubber bands. Victims. Some smiling, some not. Most were candid, kids on swings, women stepping out of cars, men talking on phones. None of them were crime scene shots. These were taken before. Baines muttered, "This is her stockroom." "No," I said quietly. "This is her catalog." Alcott stepped forward despite Harlow's hand on his chest. "Where's my kid?" His voice cracked on the last word. "CSU Tech." Voice steady. "Here." We all turned. She'd peeled back plastic on one of the smaller bundles. Inside was a child's face, pale in the freezer light, hair frozen into stiff strands. Alcott went still. No cry, no shout. Just that awful sound of air leaving a person when they've been emptied out. Harlow signaled for the tech to stop. "Seal it. We'll process." I stepped back, needing air that didn't taste like ammonia and grief. That's when my phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. "Look in the coat pocket." I stared at Lydia's folded red coat in the freezer. Against every protocol, I pulled a glove tight and reached into the inner lining. My fingers brushed paper. A single Polaroid. Fresh enough the chemical smell was still there. It was me, standing in the alley behind Lydia's house less than an hour ago, flashlight in hand. Harlow saw my face change. "Vega, what is it?" I slipped the photo into my vest. "We need to move," I said. "She's watching us. Right now." From somewhere beyond the units, a car engine turned over. Headlights swept briefly across the far fence, then vanished into the dark. And in my gut, I knew. Lydia Marsh wasn't running from us. She was leading us somewhere we hadn't seen yet, and she'd just made sure I was coming.